This is Inside the UCC Group Leadership in Action podcast with your hosts Laura Butler and Jay Maymi. This podcast will share groundbreaking initiatives by the university and speak with leading educators, business leaders, and entrepreneurs that are paving the way for growth, transformation, and success.
Welcome to the UCC Leadership in Action podcast. I'm Laura Butler.
And I'm Jay Maymi. Laura, I'm so excited that today launches a brand new year for our podcast, 2022. It's going to be a fantastic year of programming. I'm so looking forward to it.
So am I, Jay, and we have such an impressive lineup of guests. So that's going to be exciting throughout the year to work along with. Happy New Year, everyone.
Well, and speaking of exciting guests, we're going to get right to it today. We have today opening up this year's first podcast is one of the most recognizable faces on TV in the broadcast journalism world. Cleo Greene is not only the anchor here in Dallas for WFAA, but she's been an anchor for the last 13 years in some of the major markets in the U.S. And here's what's cool, Laura, she's actually from your homeland. So she's going to be joining us today to share. Yeah, it's exciting. So she's going to be with us today to share with us the intricacies of the broadcast journalism world and how to become successful in that field. Let's welcome to the show, Cleo Greene.
Oh, glad to be here.
Before we get started, Cleo, with learning a little bit about your story and what we're going to dive into for the episode today, can you share a little bit about your story?
Okay, my story. Honestly, it starts in South Jersey because that's where I'm from, New Jersey. But I don't have the Jersey accent because everyone asks me, do you have the Jersey accent? And I don't think I have that because, I'm a first-generation American. My family is from the Caribbean. My mom, she was born and raised in Jamaica. My dad is from Guyana, which is a country right next to Venezuela in South America. And they both immigrated to New York in the 80s, to Long Island. And my father to Queens, where most West Indians go to, and my dad was the Air Force, and that's how I ended up in New Jersey. I grew up on McGuire Air Force Base, and honestly, I was the kid that was always trying to fit in. I didn't play any sports. That wasn't cool. I remember taking piano and swimming lessons, and man, I wish I would have stuck with one of those, but luckily, I knew pretty early on what I'd like to do when I grow up, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, what you do it greatly, and it's appreciated by, I know, a lot of your fans who watch you and all the stations that you've been a chance to do. Yes, of course. In fact, you've got some good news to share before I dive into the next question here. You've just been hired or appointed to take on a professorship at a local college. Isn't that true?
Yes. And it's so unreal. I've been working on this since last year, and everything, I guess, came full circle this year. So I'm going to be teaching an announcing class at Tarrant County College. So I have about 20 students right now, and I'm super excited. This is going to be my first year teaching, but I just feel like I have so much to give back and so much to teach students who want to get into broadcast. So I'm just so excited. This is going to be quite interesting, but I'm ready for it.
So let's take it all the way back to what first inspired you to pursue a career in broadcast journalism?
Oh, my gosh. That's going to be my little grandma, who's 4'11". She is a huge news junkie. I remember growing up, my parents, they would send my brother and I to basically go live with my grandparents in Jamaica from the day school ended to when it started. So I had some deep-rooted childhood memories from growing up in Jamaica with my grandparents. I remember her watching the whole O.J. Simpson trial, everything. My grandma was a news junkie. And I can't remember if we were watching 2020 or 60 Minutes, but she looked at me and she was like, in her accent, you know what, Cleo, I can't see you doing that, And I was like, see me doing what? And she was like, on the news, I talk the news like the woman that I can't see her doing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I can see myself doing that too. And I was in 8th grade. I had to have been in 8th grade. And I was just like, all right, what are my steps going to be to make sure that I am the lady on that anchor desk telling the news so that my grandma's watching me. And in high school, we had a television station. It was called Lenape District Television Station. I did the morning news there. Then I went to Rowan University, and it's a small school, not huge like Syracuse University. I was able to like really get some hands-on experience, and I had my own show called On the Couch at Rowan. I still remember that. And then I also interned at NBC in Philly for the I Unit, the investigative team, and a small station in Atlantic City. So, I mean, I always knew I had a desire to tell stories. I loved to read growing up. I just loved how, I guess, the news industry works, because no day is the same, and you just meet so many different people, and it's still true to this day.
Cleo, it's so great to have you on our show. I mean, especially being a Jamaican, I'm so proud of your accomplishments. And just listening to the influence of grandparents, I mean, there's so many of us that can relate to that, the influence of our grandparents. And I'm sure she's just very proud of you as well. And just listening to you, too, such great experience and rich background and culture. And you're even in my county, Tarrant County. And I'm excited to see what you're going to be able to do in terms of contributing to enriching the lives of the students that you encounter. So that's just all amazing. Congratulations on all of that as well. And what a way to start 2022, Cleo.
I know. Oh my gosh, I know. I'm like, getting training on how to create a college syllabus and all of that. And I'm like, wait a minute, am I doing too much? But I'm like, no, this is what you got to do. You can do it. So wish me luck. Pray for me.
Yeah, well, good luck. And, I lecture at a few universities. I'm certainly lectured at UCC. And, it's really exciting because especially if you have, the desire to give back and contribute to a legacy, this is a fantastic way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Cleo, my question really is about what are some of the challenges that you face with broadcast and journalism in today's world?
Over the years, there's been honestly a lot of challenges, right? But I think at this moment, I would say it's probably media distrust right now. Let's be honest, right? Like, it's been a political season for quite some time now, like over 4 years. So that's a huge issue right now. Media distrust, racial unrest, the pandemic, the vaccines and the take-home tests, all of that. There's just a huge wave of people right now that do not trust their local news sources. And that honestly concerns me because that's my job, right? I'm a journalist. And I think that to continue to combat that is probably just continue to be honest and to report accurate and balanced news. My news director constantly reminds us, like, listen, it is not our job to be first on air with this news, right? Like, we want to be accurate with what we report. So we just always got to keep that in mind. I'm also a part of the equity and diversity team at my station, and we're always looking at ways to internally work on things like implicit bias. And I guess another huge challenge right now is just the fall of traditional news. When I grew up, I remember my dad getting off work and coming home and taking his uniform off, and we would sit at the dinner table and watch the 6 o'clock news, right? Like, I could sing the hum of the opening of the 6 o'clock news in Philadelphia. It's still the same. But, gone are the days of people that are making it a priority to sit in front of the television at 6 and 10 o'clock to see what happened that day nationally and locally. Because why, right? Like, we get all of our news headlines come right to our phones as an alert, scrolling on social media, Google. There's just so many different news platforms and options that people are getting their news from that, quite frankly, I'm afraid I might not have a job in 10 years.
It's not the only industry that has concerns about job security. That's a real thing. So I think, we have news meetings about this. We have consultants that talk about this with us. And honestly, I mean, the remedy at this point is to change with the times, right? Like, you got to change with what people are doing. So right now, we try to attract our audience on all streaming platforms, on social media. I would say that a lot of the people who watch us in the morning, I work on, our Daybreak show.
a lot of people that come to our newscasts are people that we interact with on social media. It's kind of weird. So it's like we're bringing them back to their television station. It's a change that I'm working on.
Very good. And being creative and exploring options, which is really what you're doing. But I think the biggest thing really is people are overwhelmed with the news, especially the negative aspect of it relating to COVID. And some people are now being encouraged not to watch it so much. What would you say to those who are really closing off from it just because it's just too much?
You always have to have a balance. There's some people I meet and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an anchor reporter at WFAA Channel 8 in downtown Dallas. They're like, oh, you're on the news? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, I don't watch the news. I'm like, oh, okay, why did you even ask me what I do or even have a care? And a part of me sometimes replies and I'm like, hey, if I didn't have to watch the news, I probably wouldn't either. But, it's my job. I got to. But we got to stay current with what's going on, right? So I think you just have to, with food, with anything, right? Like balance. Like whether you just take in a little bit or change your feeds on your phone to see, what are you going to take in? Do you just want political stories? Do you just want health stories? And just forget about, anything that concerns crime or what have you. Like you can really filter the news that you bring in, but I just always feel like just to be well-rounded and to know what's going on, you kind of got to know, right? Like you kind of got to be aware of what's going on in your own community.
Yes, and being aware too is not just about the negative things, but the opportunities that are being presented and what the government and what private sector and the various different organizations, initiations are. So I think it's important to be in the know, but it's also good to hear from you in this particular field, exploring ways and being mindful of what people's views are today and looking at more creative ways to keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Cleo, one of the things that I know that we all go through, those that have achieved a modicum of success, especially in a very tough industry like you're in the broadcast journalism industry, it's a very difficult industry to crack. So can you share with us what's been your journey in this field of journalism and what's it been like for you? And are others who have gone through similar journeys, do they experience the same thing that you have? This is sort of in a way to help students or anyone that's interested in the field understand the journey and what it takes.
Yeah, that's a great question because everyone has a completely different story of how they got their foot into the door and where they're at now, right? And I think that's the beauty of this industry as well. For me, I graduated college in 2008, and unfortunately, that was the year of the economic recession, so no one was hiring. In fact, stations were like, you call it mass suicide. It doesn't sound good right now, but that's what you called it, when they got rid of just a lot of talent because they just couldn't afford to keep them on. So a lot of people were getting laid off during this time, so I just wasn't able to find a job, and I'm like, all right, well, what am I going to do? I can't work my little mall job any longer. Am I going to apply for graduate school? What am I going to do? And I remember going on a website. I don't even know if it still exists right now, but it's called tvspy.com. And I found a job to be a feature reporter for the public broadcasting system, PBS, in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. And I'm like, all right, this is market nothing, and I'll explain that a little later. But I'm like, let me just go. If they take me, I'm going to go. I'm going to treat this like my graduate experience and make my mistakes and get my first job. And lo and behold, they did call me. And, I remember one of the questions was, why do you want to come to the Virgin Islands? And I remember saying, I have an affinity to the islands. My family's from the West Indies, and I think they truly appreciated that. And I got the job. I remember moving out there with my 2 little suitcases. My news director picked me up from that small little airport. And I was there for 4 years. And gosh, I was so young. I was trying to be so professional and get my stuff done. I wish I would have enjoyed living in the Virgin Islands. But I was in another place in my life. I was trying to be so grown up. But I guess in television, there's 200 markets, and that's so important for people to understand. There's 200 markets. The top 5 are New York, LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Dallas. And in each market, there's an ABC, your NBC, your CBS, your Fox, Univision. So honestly, the old adage was right out of college that you get your first on-air job, like in a small market, and then you climb the ladder. And then once you start getting into those bigger markets, there's more eyes on you. It's a bigger demographic. It's a bigger city. You can make more money and so on. So my journey is PBS in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Then I went to Georgia, Augusta, Georgia. Then I was in Maryland. Then I went to Minneapolis. And now I'm here in Dallas. And gosh, I hope they keep renewing my contract because I really do like it here.
Well, we'll all be praying for that, We'll be praying for that. Well, I know your schedule is crazy. You and I have had a chance to chat so many times, and your routine, which is now routine for about 7 or 8 years, requires you to get up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning to get ready for the morning anchoring. That's a lot of dedication, preparation, and commitment. So what has your experience taught you about dedication and commitment if you're going to succeed in this?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I tell my mentees and students that I mentor who want to get into this industry is that you have to be willing to be uncomfortable to make it in this industry, right? Like, I mean, I do not enjoy waking up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and driving into work and putting on makeup. Like, no one wants to put on an eyelash at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, who? But these are things that I have to deal with, right? Like, it's just the nature of the business. And there's a lot of sacrifice. There's no holidays and news. I've missed a lot of family get-togethers, a lot of Christmases with my family and friends because I'm working. And, that's something you have to deal with as well. So I would say a lot of the sacrifice in this industry does come personally. And if you're willing to, I guess, be uncomfortable, then you're going to make it. Yeah.
Yes, you certainly did. And Cleo, a couple of things are coming out. Credibility, how important it is to be credible, especially in this day and age. Being flexible, especially in your field, professionalism, commitment, sacrifice, and just appreciating the journey and learning and being open and willing to learn, take constructive criticism, apply what you know, and have faith. I'm sure that's a big part of it. Believing in yourself.
100%. I can't even tell you. I mean, I've had some dark days at some stations where, I get off work and I go back to my apartment and I just cry and I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I you know what I mean? Like, why am I doing this? I just want to go back to my little room at my parents' house in Jersey and call it a day. But I know I'm doing it, right? And I know not every day is going to be an amazing day. But, yeah, there's some rough days where your news director and your bosses just think you're not doing things right. And, you mess up on air on something you've been working on for so long. I mean, it's a lot of deadlines, and you've got to have some tough skin some days.
Yeah, I think definitely most days in your field, especially being in the spotlight. So what would you say to someone who wants to go into the career, have a career in broadcast and journalism, and who might even be even more ambitious to be an anchor? What should they focus on early and throughout? I know we covered a number of things that we mentioned: credibility, commitment, sacrifice. But what else would you add to that?
If you're coming out of college or maybe you're still in college, I would hope so. A senior, junior, interning is going to be your best bet to kind of get your foot in the door, because right now most, if not all, news stations will not take you as an intern unless you're a college student. And then you need to make a resume reel to get into the industry. And this resume reel, it's not something that's physically on a CD anymore. It's just a link that you can either upload to YouTube or Vimeo. And it's really just a montage of stand-ups that you'll do and stories that you do, so that news director can click on your link and be like, all right, they got it. I'm interested in them. They're really good at storytelling. So that resume reel is going to be your ticket into the door. And then right now, I'm really telling a lot of my mentees who are, maybe they've already graduated or maybe they're thinking about a career change and they want to get into broadcast, to take advantage of social media at this point. Because right now I'm seeing a lot of young journalists and people, you know, who aren't necessarily young, they want a career change, but they've kind of molded their social media platforms and pages to make it appear as they are journalists, right? Like they have their iPhones, they have a little camera, they're going to events in their community, they're editing on their laptops or iMovie, something simple to use, and they're storytelling, and people can see this. And I honestly can tell you, I know a few people who never went to college for broadcast journalism, but this is a true passion of theirs. And a news director saw their stuff, saw their content on YouTube, and gave them a call.
Yeah, no, sounds that way.
It's really the power of creative right now. It's a different time in journalism.
Yes, this is great advice, Cleo, and it's really all about positioning as well. And certainly in this day and age, we have a lot of practice. I think everybody is telling a story in some way or form, and technology is supporting and aiding that process.
So, Cleo, I know that every industry, you've got those that arrive, and then you've got those that really arrive. I mean, the high tier, the top echelon, the Michael Jordans of their field. And it's funny, I had a conversation with Dr. Knowles, Matthew Knowles. He was someone who's actually looking forward to coming on the podcast pretty soon. But I had a conversation with him on my radio show, and we were talking about what does it take for a singer to really take to the top, or an artist to really get to the top. And he was talking about Beyonce, who's his daughter. And he said to me something really powerful. He said, listen, I can go to any Sunday service and hear a number of gospel singers who can out-sing Beyonce all day long. They don't have the star power. So let's talk about that real quick. What separates the broadcaster, the journalist who wants to be on broadcast, wants to be on TV, and they do everything right? What separates them from those that are the top rank on the major networks in the major cities? What's the difference?
Oh, Jay, that's a complicated question because, everyone is so different, and I think that I can only be honest with my answer on this one, in terms of, who's at the top and who's not quite there. This industry is full of personalities, right? And if you go to a news station, whether it be local or national, you're going to, prime example, hopefully he never hears this, but Michael Strahan, all right? Like, NFL champ, right? And now he's the freaking main anchor at GMA in New York City. He's got the star power, right? Like, he's got star power, believe it or not. He's got a lot of personality. He has this rich history about him. Like, people genuinely love him, Jay, and that's why he's in the position that he's in. Now, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of broadcast journalists who look at Michael and they're like, what the hell? Like, I have been working my ass off to get to a spot like that, and you mean to tell me, like, Michael's just going to swoop in and grab $1 million contract and work at GMA? Like, there's people that feel that way. But, that's the difference. Like, some people just have that star quality about themselves, just that, gosh, you just want to watch them, right? Like, they make you laugh. You can relate to them. So I would say personality can definitely get you to the top, right? But there are also people who are introverts, and being this loud, funny, charismatic personality is just not in them. That's not everyone's DNA. So I would say to get to that top tier, if you're not this star quality personality, it's going to be your brain, because I have also met a lot of journalists and anchors and personalities who are just so incredibly smart, right? Like, you're just listening to them and you're like, how did you know that, right? Like, they're giving you dates and times and names that I couldn't even remember. So that's what I'm seeing that really separates people in this industry is knowledge, that brain power, just being sharp as a whistle and knowing your stuff. And that that personality, that big bubbly personality that everyone loves to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Cleo. I mean, and what we really appreciate is you're speaking to a wide audience. You know, we have different personalities. That's just a reality, right? But it doesn't mean, right, you should be discouraged. There are many ways, and certainly knowledge and charisma and ability to connect and, you know, for people to relate. Those things are important. And I guess also applying what you know and garner the, you know, experience and take advantage of opportunities. I think sometimes too it's just positioning yourself for success and being willing. Like you heard, you said you got, you know, times changed. People weren't hiring in 2008, and an opportunity came for you to move to the Virgin Islands, and then another opportunity, and you've been moving constantly. So that requires a personality too that's willing to try and explore and not allow their fears to cripple their progress.
Right, because I'm not the bright light bulb in the pack, but I sure have ambition.
And that's so important. Now, Cleo, I want to ask you this question. In every industry, I mean, we have highs and lows. Can you kind of walk us through one of your most challenging days, what that looks like, as well as one of your happiest days in the industry?
One of my most challenging days is honestly when I have gone through all of my scripts for a newscast and I am just not alert, right? Like it's almost crippling and scary at the same time because it's like I'm reading the teleprompter, but mentally I am so tired mentally that the words are just not coming out. And this is my job, right? Like stuttering and saying stuff wrong is just not good. And I have those days, like granted, everyone's human, but when I stumble and, people will say, oh my God, it wasn't even bad, Cleo. Are you kidding me? I'm just like, no, like that's not what I'm supposed to do. That is like crippling for me mentally. And those are really bad days for me because I'm super hard on myself. Like I will literally go back and watch every show that I anchor and I tell a story, so just to see what did it look like? What can I do better? Should I have said that this way or this way? So those are bad days for me. When my game is just not on par.
Right. And Cleo, even on those days, what I like is that you're sharing, you're giving tips on how to address that. You review your content, you explore what you could have done differently, you assess the situation, and you try to be better prepared. But the truth is, all of us as human beings, I do corporate training, and you know how it is. You're in front of an audience. You can't, if you don't show up, that's a big problem, right? Because it's you as an individual, and then you have hundreds and perhaps thousands in front of you. And again, we're human beings, right? We have our challenges in our lives, and being able to go put on that poker face, focus on being a professional, focus on what you need to do, your desired end result, is really challenging. Especially when you're dealing with emotional challenges. So what do you have to say to people? How do they deal with that? What are some of your pointers?
You have to pause. You have to pause and reset. Like I have to do that sometimes during a newscast, but I feel like, it's just my delivery is not the best it could be. I just got to, like, in a commercial break, tell myself, Cleo, snap out of it. Like, God, take over what I'm saying right now and help me get back game, right? Like I got to just refocus. So I would really honestly say just remembering that you are human, and gosh, I know we are our worst critic, but remembering that you're human and you have to pause and reset, right? And get back on your A game. And you'll do that a lot in this industry. Yes.
So daily affirmations, having faith and believing in yourself, and you have to be your biggest cheerleader, your biggest supporter, really.
You do because, you'll find yourself in some newsrooms, and this is being, very honest, you'll find yourself in some newsrooms and you can kind of tell who are, I guess, teachers' pets and, who are not. And that can play with your confidence as well. So you got to know, like, you're there for a reason, and your job is not necessarily to be your news director or teacher's pet, or, you know what I mean? Best of the best, but you've got to give 100% every day for yourself, and understand that is just the way this industry is as well. You know, people will pick who they love and who they're not going to give so much attention to. You know what? And a high for me, honestly, I'm in a position right now as the weekend morning anchor that I'm able to book my own guests for our show for the days that I actually anchor. And it has been a pleasure to actually book people in our community that have never had, you know, a spot on television before, whether they're talking about their business or, you know, they're an expert in some field of study. So to actually see them on air and then to get an email or a text message from them and say, oh, my gosh, Cleo, thank you for giving me a shot at that. I'm never going to forget that, or it helped, you know, propel me into this area, or people are coming to my business because I was on Channel 8 and you gave me a shot. That has definitely been a high for me working here.
Well, Cleo, you know what's been a high for me and Laura? Having you on the show.
Oh, God.
It's been
having
great,
you
Cleo.
on the show. It's been absolutely. We appreciate your wisdom, your energy. I said that we were going to kick off.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Listen, we wanted to kick off 2022's programming with energy and high power and wonderful insight. You provided that into this complex world of journalism. Right, exactly. So we appreciate being on the show, and we will have you back in the future. Cleo Green.
All right. Thank you.
Wishing you all the best, Cleo.
Thank you so much.
Laura, I told you we were going to launch the 2022 podcast programming with a bang, and we did with Cleo Green.
You certainly did. It was a very exciting interview, and you could hear her enthusiasm and excitement and commitment to the industry of journalism and broadcasting. And being, you know, with Jamaican heritage, it was really an honor to have her on, and she gave some brilliant points, so it was excellent.
Well, for those that are catching our show today for the first time, I want to remind them that they can catch this program, not only the archived episodes, but the future episodes can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Podcast Chaser, and, of course, at the ucc.edu.jm website.
Thank you all for listening, as always, and keep safe and focused. Until next time, I'm Laura Butler.
And I'm Jay Maymi, your host. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.